Morning, YouTube. It's time for another comics review. This time, I got a whole bunch of Turtles, Transformers, and G.I. Joe. As usual, actually. There's nothing different about that, but a little bit more of a treasure trove this time than it was last time. Still not that many issues, but enough that it took me a few days to read through them all because I can't stay awake at night in bed when I'm reading a comic book. I end up with it on my chest as I go. But, oh, and happy coronavirus to everyone, too. I hope you're not quarantined somewhere and believing in all the overhype over this whole thing. But, anyways, I could go on forever about this nonsense. So let's just get into the comics, shall we? First up, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Urban Legends number 18. In this one, Leonardo is in the sewers of New York City tracking down these Komodo dragon mutants that have been terrorizing the city, beneath the city, and he ends up facing King Komodo, who actually bites off his hand. And in the meantime, Casey Jones shows up in the lair and gets Mikey, and they go off into the sewers after Leo, and notice some dead bodies of some guys that down there that are hunting these monsters for a reward. And in the end, King Komodo lures Leonardo into kind of not his lair, but some area where he's got Leatherhead actually tied and bound, and then he sets Leatherhead loose, and Leatherhead's enraged. So then Leo has to fight him, and that's kind of the bulk of the issue. And there's also like a brief little segment on Raphael, who is leading the Foot Clan at the time, but nothing really much happens with that. It's just a brief little panel, and then the same thing with Donnie when he's in his cyborg gear and coming down in a little ship, and he lands and gets confronted by the Earth Protection Force. And but most of it's this big fight between Leo and King Komodo and Leatherhead. Next up, back to the regular Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series. This is number 84, and it's mostly it's the whole thing's basically a fight with the Rat King. He's using children to fulfill his goals, I guess, and the Turtles are like, you can't endanger kids for your sick aims. So they're taking on the Rat King, while at the same time trying to fend off these children that he's got under his control, and he's sending them against the Turtles. So they're kind of like, oh, how do we do this, right? We don't want to hurt the kids. And then in the end, Leo has to kind of tackle the Rat King in his kind of nightmare realm, where it's more in the mind rather than physically, and combined with his brothers, they have to take him down. And then while all that's going on, there's also kind of a side story where Dr. Baxter Stockman and his assistant April O'Neil are there's a like a rat infestation going on across the city because of the Rat King, and Stockman's building his mousers to combat this rat problem, and then April convinces him to do it for free of charge to the city, which would make him look really good. And then right after all that is done and the infestation is over, he announces he's running for the mayor. So that was kind of a big boost to his career by performing that service at April's suggestion, of course. Next up, this is, I guess, 6 or 7 issues later, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles number 91. And in this one, Karai gets a dream from her grandmother Kitsune, who questions her loyalties and the path she's on. And after Karai wakes, she goes to visit Splinter and at Foot headquarters, and mingles with all the other mutants that are there, all the kids that are there, which are the kids that the Rat King had under his control. They're kind of like orphans, and so they're all living there. And then so she's talking with Splinter, and then eventually the Turtles show up, and they have to some stuff to talk to Splinter about, and so it's just kind of this big reunion where everybody's kind of getting along. And then in the meantime, the Earth Protection Force it skips over to them for a little bit, and they've acquired this robot named Metalhead. I'm not sure how they got him, because that was in most of the storylines that's Donnie's own creation. I don't know if that's what it is in this one too, but they've got a hold of him, and they're going to use him to hunt down mutants. And then that's pretty much the way it goes. And then as the Turtles and Splinter and Karai all talk, Splinter makes the decision in the end, right at the end of the issue, that he's going to turn leadership of the Foot Clan over to Karai, which kind of surprises everybody, including Karai. Next up, and this is where we are currently in the Ninja Turtles series, it's issue 103. So used to everything being episodes these days, that's my default E word. In this one, if you remember from my last video, the leader of the Mighty Mutanimals, Hob, had a disgruntled thug who set loose a trio of little mutants, and they show their face in this one. But first, there's a couple things going on. The Turtles are still grieving from Splinter's death, and so Donnie sets out from the farmhouse and shows up at April's apartment, and she's reeling herself, and her apartment's a mess, but they have this little reunion and comfort each other. Meanwhile, things aren't very good between Raph and Jenica. They kind of split. Raph goes off on his own, and there's harsh words between them. And then the other one is Mikey's new cat escapes the farmhouse outside, and he goes looking for him, and he's like totally despondent that he can't find his cat. Leonardo comes out and helps him, and they have a really tender moment where I think everybody's starting to finally realize they need each other. You know, that's kind of everybody's kind of been off doing their own thing. Well, of course, Raph, he's always the one who doesn't need anybody, but the other three are like realizing, you know, they all need each other and stuff, right? That's where at least it seems to me that the direction that it's going. And then Donnie and April, in the end, find a way to sneak into the quarantine zone inside the Mighty Mutanimals kind of territory, I guess. And while they're in there, also Jenny and what's her name? She's a lieutenant of Hob, but she's kind of like seeing that he's kind of an ass, and they see these three creatures that he had set loose by this disgruntled thug, and they're like little weasels, squirrels. I'm not sure what they are, but they're just little guys, and they're baby mutants. So and they eavesdrop on things, and they realize that Hob is breeding mutants and selling them to the Foot Clan for to be used as weapons, I guess. And so she confronts him, and right as the issue ends, she punches him out. So the Mutanimals look like they are gonna undergo some changes, anyways. Yeah. So that's the current issue. So I every time I go into the store and I get my subscription issues, my current ones, and then if I got a little extra money to spend, I go back and try and get some past issues that I don't have yet. And so that's why they're kind of sporadic in cases like that. They're not all just the current ones. There are some back issues that I pick up from time to time. Next up, Transformers number 17. If you remember where this one left off, the Slipstream and her group of ne'er-do-wells had broken into the Titan, one of the Titan communications hubs, I guess, and awakened the big Titan named Vigium or something like that. And so it doesn't start off with that, but they kind of escape the communications hub, and then it switches over to Cyclonus, who is despondent about something, and is pissed off at the Rise for the actions they've taken. So then he kind of sulks and says, I've got some decisions to make. So I have a feeling in ensuing issues that he's going to start causing some mayhem. But the bulk of it is it then goes up to a moon where Wheeljack and Huffer and some other robots are up to some I'm not exactly sure what they're doing. I think they're constructing something or fixing something up on the moon. And Cosmos and Gears come down and say, do you see the Titan that's headed this way? And Wheeljack's like, yeah, that's probably Lodestar, the only active Titan that is out there, and it's friendly to them. And Cosmos is like, that's not Lodestar. So then as it gets closer, they're like, oh god, who is this? And it's obvious that it is not of good intent. So they contact the other Titan, Lodestar, and the transformer that is within Lodestar that kind of acts as its sidekick, or I'm not exactly sure how it works, but it's almost like it doesn't control the Titan per se, but it helps to control it. And her name is Lightbright. So Lodestar has to enter the fray and engage Vigium as this Titan hits the moon and starts causing all this destruction. And that's kind of where it leaves off. This battle has just started, and Lodestar takes a big hit as it starts. So it kind of ends on a cliffhanger like that. So I just want to make sure I have that name right, but I'm pretty sure it's a Vigium or whatever. But either way, giant Transformers are awesome. Next up is issue 4 in the Transformers Galaxies kind of sub storyline. And in this one, if you remember from issue 3, the Constructicons got sent away to a planet to build an energon harvester crew or something like that, and it's the planet Mayalx. And so they set about their task, but also going along for the ride with them are the Insecticons, who are kind of corrupting the Constructicons and encouraging them to embrace their more destructive side, I guess, and the Devastator personality of their consciousness. So the Insecticons are sneaking around and feasting on live Transformers and converting them into Energon. And through this process, they finally get the Constructicons to form Devastator and just wreak havoc. So they basically destroy everything in their vicinity and all the work that they've done on Mayalx. And as the issue ends, they kind of find peace. Like, yeah, we are who we are. This is what we do, right? And meanwhile, Shockwave and some of his forces land on the planet and take away all the Energon that had been harvested, which was supposed to be for the Autobots, but was hijacked by Shockwave and his troopers to aid in whatever devious schemes they are up to. So that's kind of how that one went. Any issue where you got Devastator forming and then wreaking havoc is one I want to read, that's for sure. Next up, another Transformers. This is a one-off, a Valentine's special, and it features 2 Transformers I'm not familiar with. They haven't been in any of these other ones. A female bot named Glyph she's a really smarty pants, and she's like an engineer or something. I don't know. She's into, like, she's basically a nerd, and she gets confirmed for a long-standing assignment she's been trying to get undertaken, where she gets to go to this planet and study and interact with the native species and try and translate their language and stuff like that. So she goes and tells her friend Tapout, who is more of like a gladiator Transformer. He likes to fight and in the arenas and stuff like that. And he's like, oh no, how, you can tell there's something between them. And he's like, oh no, how long are you going to be gone? And she's like, well, it doesn't matter because I need a bodyguard while I'm away, so you can be that. So then they take off together. And as they get there, the species on planet is like these little lemur / raccoon / squirrel creatures, and she can't translate their language right away, but this species unleashes these monsters, and Tapout, of course, has to engage them. The first one's like this T-Rex looking thing, and then there's like wolf creatures and apes and stuff like that. And the creatures respond to Tapout taking these creatures down. So their culture is kind of based around these feats of strength and battle, which is more in Tapout's realm, which kind of upsets Glyph because she wanted to be all intellectual and engage with the species and learn about them, and they're just like, fight! So, but in the end, she comes to terms with it and even gets engaged in it herself, and you can tell that this experience has brought the 2 bots closer together, and that's kind of the way it ends. And there's a brief little side story at the end with Cosmos. He's up in space, and he's rescuing Gears a couple of times, which ties in to Transformers issue number 17 when Cosmos and Gears come down and warn Wheeljack and Huffer and those guys, like, do you see this Titan? So it's kind of all in that same timeline there, so which is pretty neat. And Cosmos is while he's up in space doing his rescue missions and stuff like that, he's contacted mysteriously by another bot, and they have all these conversations, but he doesn't know who this other bot is. And then right at the end, he kind of turns around and you just see a shadow fall across him, and it's like, hey, I'm here. And so you never know who it is, but there's obviously some sort of relationship being struck up there for Cosmos and some mystery robot. Last up, G.I. Joe issue number 270. In this one, it starts off with Destro and Baroness continuing to be rescued by Zartan from those weird cyborg alien beings that had captured them, and they eventually escape. The Dreadnoks show up in the, what is the name of that? I have the toy, the Thunder Machine, and scoot them away to their headquarters. In the meantime, the entire G.I. Joe team is being mobilized to strike on Cobra Commander. And so at a bunch of different locations, they're getting all their equipment up above ground, getting geared up to go, getting the planes in and loaded. And then suddenly the higher-ups call in and squash the operation, which pisses everybody off. And everything is put away and tucked away. But not the G.I. Joe team's emotions. Those are still on high alert. And then, meanwhile, Cobra Commander, underneath in the city of Springfield, in the basement of the community center or whatever it is, him and Dr. Mindbender are getting ready to put the brainwave scanner or whatever the device is on Snake Eyes, or who they believe is Snake Eyes, to find out all his secrets and do whatever they plan on doing to make their own weapon out of him. And that's when it kind of ends there. But right after that, as the issue comes to a close, a number of the crew from G.I. Joe are like, you know what? No, we don't believe this is right, so we're gonna go and we're gonna do it ourselves. And everybody kind of has everybody's back, and it snowballs, and it's like, well, the whole team's going no matter what. So they're it looks like they're gearing up for some sort of major battle that's coming. And of course, the Dreadnoks are going to be involved in Destro and Baroness, and also the October Guard were getting set to mobilize on Cobra Commander's location as well. So there's all these different players involved, and it looks like it's all coming to a head. Whether it's going to be next issue where we start to see the battles, I don't know, because sometimes in comics you can have an issue that's totally dragged out and really slow and more developing in the plot. So I don't know if it's going to be like that, or if it's going to be right into the action next issue. But either way, something big is brewing, and I can't wait to see how it kind of culminates. And yeah, that's it. So lots of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, a bit of Transformers, and only one lonely G.I. Joe issue. But I'm sure it might be the opposite next time. You never know. But yeah, until around this time next month with my next haul, I bid you adieu on the comic front.